our gospel today, we have yet another very familiar reading, the rich young man. This is another one that most people have definitely heard before. And, the sum up is, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus says, "Sell everything you have, give to the poor, and then follow me." And the rich man went away sad because he had a lot of stuff. But I want to draw your attention to what Jesus said at the end. No one who gives away houses, brothers, or sisters for my sake will not receive 100 times more in the age to come. So this reading is about reward. In the end, it's about recognition and reward. So Jesus says, everything you have is meant to further God's cause somehow. Your stuff doesn't really belong to you. That's, the problem the rich young man had. But at the same time, Jesus also says that God will take care of us. We will be well taken care of when all this earthly business is behind us. So we should go forth and do our work and not worry so much about what we're going to get in return. That's not what's important right now. So this whole reading sounds like an advertisement to the Peace Corps to me. And I mean the entire reading. For those of you that didn't know already, I was in fact in Peace Corps for a standard 2-year service. I was in Burkina Faso, that's West Africa. I was a math and science teacher from 2006 to 2008. So there are two comparisons I want to bring to your attention between this gospel reading and the Peace Corps. The first one is the obvious one. Go, sell everything you have, and then follow me. In the Peace Corps, you don't bring very much with you. When you get on the plane, you get 2 bags and a carry-on. That's what you have in terms of American things for 2 years of your life. So who knows, maybe the rich young man would have been just fine if Peace Corps was a thing back then. I don't know. Maybe. The other comparison, though, it's less obvious, I admit, but it's that notion that we should go forth and do good work without knowing what sort of reward is on the way. Because when the day comes for you to actually start your service, you get 3 days of orientation here in the States, and then you get on a plane, and you have 3 months of training in the country that you're, serving. So those 3 days were a blur, of course, but there is one thing that stood out for orientation, one thing before we actually left the United States. They said to us right at the beginning, everybody, forget about receiving proof of a job well done. Just get that out of your head right now. You are all volunteers representing the United States of America. You're going to teach, you're going to share your culture, you're going to learn something about their culture in return. You are going to do good things. But in all likelihood, you're not going to receive a scrap of evidence that anything you did overseas meant anything to anyone. Like, you're not going to get a letter in the mail years from now like, "Hey, Mr. Jones, it's me. I really did make it all the way to college, and it's all because you were my 8th grade teacher." Like, that letter is not going to come. You're not going to get statistical proof that your village was better educated or healthier or happier because you were a volunteer there for a couple of years. That's not what's going to happen. And when it's time for you to come home, you're going to board a plane, and a lot of you are going to ask whether you did anything meaningful for the very people you were trying to serve. That is normal. You just have to believe that what you're doing is worthwhile and good, even though it's going to come with no proof. I am very thankful they told us that right at the beginning. Because, there are some people who, they joined Peace Corps for the bragging rights. They wanted to save the world by Americanizing it and pointing how they specifically did a better thing in another country. And, that's just not the way it works. And I personally would have been crushed if that was the way I measured my success. One thing about my time there that I am eternally grateful for, I was assigned to the northern part of my country, which was 50% Muslim. And those Muslims in my village treated me very well. They treated me really well, and they knew perfectly well that I was an American, and they knew I was a practicing Catholic. But I respected them, and they respected me, and that entire village lived in perfect harmony. 50% Christian, 50% Muslim, no violence or anything like that in the country. And I mean, it's amazing. I have silly stories about hanging out with Muslims in a Muslim community. How many Americans can even say that? You know, and I'm just grateful for the experience because it was a testament to the true potential of genuine diplomacy. Not the kind of diplomacy that depends on political favors and all that garbage. No, none of that. It was diplomacy that was based off of mutual respect. And it was awesome. And now, 10 years later, that entire region has been taken over by ISIS. You can imagine the disappointment. So there's not armed groups of soldiers in every village or anything like that, I don't think anyway, but that entire territory surrounding my village, about a quarter of the country, was significantly influenced by martial, extremist Muslims with a very anti-American agenda. So the Peace Corps does not send volunteers to that part of the country anymore, and this might not be true anymore, but the last I heard, all Americans were forbidden from traveling through that part of their country for their own safety. That is a crying shame. That is heartbreaking. But it would be wrong for me to look at that and say, well, I guess my time was worthless after all. That's not true. I know that's not true. There's not a scrap of evidence that I can show you or anybody else, but I know that my time and my effort was worthwhile. It was good work that didn't come with a reward. And frankly, I kind of like the idea that me and my fellows, we were some of the last Americans that those villagers really got to meet. And if these ISIS agents are in fact, telling these villagers that all Americans are evil imperialists who want to destroy everything about them, I feel comfortable knowing that they will remember their Peace Corps volunteers and know that that's not really true. This general lesson applies to all of us somehow. All of us have done some good for the sake of the gospel, and we will never truly know how far that goodness spreads. Some of you have been fantastic bosses or teachers, and you have no idea how many people dearly love you for it. Some of you have said just the right thing at just the right time to someone who was really hurting, and you are clueless about the hope that you rekindled in their soul. And of course, all of us are here at Mass, and not one of us, not one single one of us, really understands the good that we're doing here. It's true, we are normally not immediately rewarded for our hour in church, but that's not the point. It is good for us to be here. And I'm very proud of you all for your devotion to this sacrament. It is good. That doesn't necessarily come with a concrete reward. And we are called, of course, to continue to do these good things of various types without worrying about what we're owed. When we think about reward or recognition when we're doing good works, that just isn't helpful. God will take care of all of that later. But now we're meant to learn from the story of the rich young man. Let's not be too attached to our stuff, to our bragging rights, or to our reputation, because there is work to be done, and all of us can lend a hand in building the earthly city which is founded on truth justice,